So, adding my guest. Here we go. So, good evening and hello from Linz. Thank you for joining. Hi, Harry. Thank you for joining me so quick.
Hello. Yes, smooth.
Perfect. So I just was starting and saying good evening and welcome. This is OÖ Art, the art channel of the Upper Austrian State Museums. And we were just discussing how to pronounce OÖ. My name is Markus Reindl, and today I will be talking with one of the artists behind the exhibition Voicegems we are currently showing in our Metaverse location on Cryptovoxels. My guest here tonight is Harry Yeff, aka Reeps100. Hi, Harry, again.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to speak. I mean, we've been in contact for a while now with the Cryptovoxels exhibition. I mean, there's a lot of curiosity around the project, but it's nice to communicate and shed a little light and hear about future plans.
And have a face to the emails we are sending nearly every day. So, I will start with a quick introduction, if this is okay. And just for those of our guests who do not know who you are yet, let's say yet. So Harry Yeff is an artist working with voice, and he's not only a highly regarded stage artist. His fascination with voice goes way deeper than you can probably imagine, crossing over between sound and visual art. Harry is researching the capabilities of voice and experimenting with it, and he's part of several studies about the human voice. And so Harry's work, Second Self, where he's pushing his own limits by interacting with an AI, garnered global attention. And yeah, if you have not seen the documentary We Speak Music, including Second Self and Harry's work with and on voice, I urge you to do so. It's a great documentary. I really like it. Harry's most recent project, and the one we are going to talk about tonight, is Voicegems, which he's doing together with Trung Bao. Voicegems is about generating digital gemstones and physical sculptures of the most remarkable, influential, and critically endangered voices on Earth. So having said all that, Harry, it's again, thank you for joining us. It's a bit difficult currently to travel around, so we have to do a lot online. And actually, I'm happy that we did an online exhibition here because we are currently under lockdown here in Austria again. And so our Cryptovoxel space is actually the only venue we currently have that is open in full. We have some smaller objects like in public space that you can view, obviously. So traveling is not the thing right now, but you have been in Linz before in 2019. Maybe you can just let us know what you were presenting here and how you did experience the city.
Yeah, I mean, Linz has a magic to it, I think, in many ways, is such a founder's energy in terms of digital art and creativity. And I always dreamed to travel to Ars Electronica. I had a few projects like prior to when we traveled that nearly resulted in me experiencing the festival. But the reason I was there was actually for Second Self, the project that you mentioned. And my role over the last 10 years, I guess the kind of manifesto is to laterally push the human voice as far as we believe it can go. And that's obviously a huge open-ended statement. But it started very much with exploring technique and what's possible, the influence of machine and voice, what are the technical capacities, the expressive capacities. And I absolutely fell in love with this concept of using machine learning and using AI as an opponent, a mentor, and a collaborator. And any kind of sort of variation of that we defined as the second self. And it's this ability to see oneself and experience oneself through the medium of machine learning and AI. And obviously my discipline being voice, over the past 5 years, many different collaborations generating synthetic voices and finding different ways to interact, whether it's natural language processing or sample RNN with Dada bots, using all kinds of systems to have real-time interactions with voice, synthetic voice, I found a way to push my voice in a brand new way. So we were invited to speak about this project at Ars Electronica. And we also did a real-time voice interaction where we used a relatively large data set of me performing and speaking and singing. And we had a really experimental conversation with a synthetic voice live on stage. So that was the original reason for me traveling to Linz. But can you hear me okay? Can we just as a...
Yeah, it's perfect. I have just one follow-up question to this that kind of came just up my mind. So if you experiencing oneself can sometimes be a bit difficult. So maybe did the AI show you something about yourself that you didn't expect or that was challenging even?
I mean, that's why I went into it originally, is how deeply uncomfortable it was, because normally a voice is like a fingerprint. There's only one. And I think people sometimes misinterpret the ability to recreate, and the fact that machine learning can be this reflection in which you end up seeing yourself in a new light, much like a mirror. Like a reflection isn't you. And it's also not a copy. It's this other thing that allows you to gain perspective, and we reference ourselves every day with this reflection. And I think people see that as when it comes to technology or data, as an unwholesome thing. But I think it's deeply spiritual, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. So when I first heard my voice being used in a way, like specifically sample RNN with Dada bots, it's my speaking voice. It sounds like me, but there's phrases and compositions and ideas that I've never had. And that ability to have this constant reference point, I just thought was a stunning, wonderful, wholesome, spiritual thing. And I guess it mirrors what you see in game theory with chess and Go, where referencing machines is making games more beautiful. And it's making human play more beautiful. So I've spent my whole life trying to sound like a machine with my voice, and now machines are trying to sound like me. And it's a really interesting dance and partnership. And that's another lifelong project, is to see how these tools, because they are just tools, there is no autonomous AI, how they can help us improve and define a new form of expertise. I like this idea of expertise 2.0.
I'm just realizing that I could talk about this topic all the time and on, but actually we're here to talk about another project, which is, of course, Voicegems. I already introduced it as a project creating digital gemstones out of voice, but maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I've been visualizing the human voice for around 12 years. It started with cymatics, so using physical forms, sand and water, to visualize vocal vibration, which is an old practice, as we know. But the aim of that was to try and represent that actually there are these details in vocal expression, and are these fingerprint-like ideas and tones and harmonics and details, which are sometimes not appreciated or seen. And I think when we find ways of visualizing the voice, it brings this attention. And a lot of the larger scale installations that have been voice visualization focused, the most amazing thing about it is when you open it up to the public, there ends up being this feedback loop where they see their voice visualized on the large scale, and people that are normally very shy or quiet or small with their voice become large. So this journey of pairing visual and voice data and voice visualization really sits under this manifesto of trying to help the world see the value of vocal expression. And there is so much already out there, and people understand the value of having a voice and what a voice is. But actually, voices are precious. So Voicegems is around about 10 years worth of concept and iterations. And the beauty of Voicegems is, I think it's the simplest and most poetic way of creating a generative system that lets people get to that idea that voices are precious. And the actual system has had many iterations, but the most recent system is designed with my partner in the project, Trong Bao. which uses 200,000 particle system, and the ability of picking up on key resonances to generate a unique RGB color swatch. And we end up with almost like a vocal DNA, a vocal code for each person. And with that, we can generate a unique gemstone. So thematically, in terms of the system as an instrument, it has an ability to preserve and help people appreciate and hold vocal moments. So there are other aspects to it, but this is the kind of sort of crash course in the key themes that we're exploring.
Yeah, but there's more detailed than I expected, especially from the technical standpoint, which is actually fascinating to me. So I wanted to ask about the other way around. Can you tell from the actual image, from the video, something about the voice? Can you also reverse this process?
Yeah, so absolutely. So what's happened, I mean, the main thing is that there are rules. And I think with generative systems, and especially with digital projects, your limitations are everything. I think in the digital space, we have this infinite ability of exploring simulation and creating these huge, sort of untethered aesthetic images. But it's actually the rules that make something have value. And it's the rules that make something have longevity. And this is the main principle of Voicegems as a concept, is the longevity of the system. So assigning specific groups of frequencies and features in voice and locking that in, there's been some fascinating kind of results. So children's voices are always more colorful, and they always bring this sort of unique spectrum. And we have one set of gems, which is from a mother and a daughter, and it's from them speaking to one another. And what we found is actually there were similarities between their voices, but in the mother's voice, there's a certain color spectrum and there was a certain form with the gem. But then her daughter had this vibrancy. And when you set these rules and it's this instrument, you start to see these correlations. And based on the ways that the gems look, you start to see, have a clear idea of how they sound. And I think that's what makes a truly a true generative instrument, is this limitation and this consistency. And the Voicegem system will have iterations. We're very careful with the set bespoke rules to make sure that this is something that has consistency and longevity.
This is beautiful. You were talking about how you had the first ideas for this project like 10 years ago, but when was the moment where you really started to produce voice gems?
How long do we have? Because I can keep my answers slightly brief.
I mean, it's the internet, it's open end.
Okay, yeah, good. So I'll tell a very quick story and then lead into this. So one of the big moments that made me which was the birth of Voicegems, there was a precursor project called C-Sound, which was simpler in its premise, and it was created with The Mill and a creative director called Rama Allen based in New York. And what we did is we had a set of rules, which was using a system that when someone spoke, much like Voicegems, it would create a form, but it was this more sculptural, it was more abstract. And we actually opened up this system to the public. And what happened was we had 500 people come into the space, and there was a very young girl who joined the installation. And she was like a koala bear on her father's leg, very, very shy, did not want to speak to anyone. And her dad sort of encouraged her to go up to the microphone. And when she kind of spoke into it and she saw her voice become this sculpture on the wall, she went from making these very small, detailed sounds to then laughing and screaming and shouting. And she opened up and she flowered. And I was always focused on the kind of information in voice. But then I realized that these systems have the ability to help us appreciate and amplify the things that are precious within us. And voice is an incredible gateway for that. It's a strange tool that the more that we use it, we don't just connect with the outside world, we also connect with ourselves. So I wondered, okay, these themes of preciousness, expression, preserving moments like that, that was the moment where, okay, there is more here. But what are the narratives, what are the themes and the concepts that that can stand the test of time? And we think in iterations of 100 years. And it was a case of thinking about, well, with these ideas of preciousness and all these themes, referencing what someone would want to keep and what is the future tradition, that I arrived at the concept of voice gems.
So connecting to what you just said, so voice gems is an archive. It is thought of as an archive. Is this archive currently like openly available, and what are the future plans for it?
Yeah, so I believe that the blockchain dimension, the NFT dimension of voice gems, is to use the blockchain as a medium of permanence. And it's the ability to actually have something that can be preserved through a technology. But the Voice Gems project isn't inherently only an NFT project. So the plans for the archive has been, there's two iterations. The first was to, from my own curation, is to decide, well, in this archive, what are the kinds of voices we wish to preserve? And this archive is logged and numbered. So every time we create a piece, we contact the individual of the voice. We speak to them about their message and what is the idea that they would like to preserve. They then send us a 1 minute piece, a 1 minute recording, which we call voice data. And then once we produce the piece, that piece is logged. So some of these pieces are public. Some of the pieces that we've created, we're not actually allowed to announce because these individuals have wanted to be a part of the archive, but they're still understanding the technology and the digital space. So the archiving and the logging of every single gem in the archive is the priority. And we're currently at 60 pieces. And what we're finding is some is simply about the voice of this person being unique, which of course is the kind of most obvious dimension to this. But Voice Gems isn't just about remarkable expressive voices. It's also about concept, and it's also about people that have influence in their ideas and voicing their concepts. So the main aspect of the project is to log and number, and each opportunity to move with the tides of blockchain opportunity will come and go. But the main place is for us to collect the pieces, and over the next 6 months, really deciding, well, what are the different homes for the pieces? Because every single piece is created consensually. Every single piece is a partnership, and nothing can ever be taken from the internet and just created. There has to be ownership over what's sent, much like data. So the main idea is the logging of the pieces, and I'm very excited to announce some of them. But connection is at the heart, and that's what we care about.
How do you actually select the voices? You haven't talked about this.
Yeah, so there's a manifesto for Voice Gems, and which you mentioned, you eloquently read out, is that the Voice Gems is an archive that aims to preserve the most unique, influential, and most vulnerable voices on Earth. So sometimes people understand the first two, but the third one is vulnerable. Why is vulnerable something that's important to the Voice Gems project? What we realized is this concept of preservation can be slightly contrary to what we see in the blockchain space, where it's about the transfer of items and wealth and being able to track and trace and immutability. And we immediately realized that actually there are certain vocal expressions that are so profoundly important that we can use the project to keep these pieces. So an example is there's a Nat Geo explorer called Ben Mirren, who's just sent us a series of recordings of critically endangered species. So the ability to actually generate gemstones from these animals and then preserve them in the archive provides all kinds of opportunities, whether it's in the present or in the future, to highlight what are these vulnerable voices. We're also looking into dying languages. And as you can see, there is this opportunity creatively to explore vocal phenomena beyond just individuals. And that's another dimension of the project and the curation.
We have been talking about, you have been talking about the Voicegems project being in cooperation with Trung Bao. So how did that come about? I mean, I can guess how you met each other because you're both from let's say the music sector, but so you have to find out your deep love for voice first. So how did that come about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we both came from the experimental voice world. I grew up in East London and Trung is from Vietnam, and we both have a deep fascination with vocal range and expression. We came from beatbox culture, which is not many know is deeply and inherently experimental. And that culture is very focused on, well, what is the actual limit of vocal expression in terms of technique and capacity? And I mean, the internet and online is only one dimension of this, but myself and Trung met through that culture. And Trung is a deeply talented, multidisciplinary artist. And we actually started to partner because we wanted to visualize AI voices. So we were building artificial voice systems for installation, which we actually do have a separate project, which is called OmniVoice, which I don't want to confuse the conversation with too many projects. But again, this theme of visualizing voice is something that we're both deeply fascinated by. And we bring a similar but different set of skills. So one aspect of Voicegems is we are not just building a visual archive, we also have an audio archive. And to create spatial audio installation, to be able to design compositions using these voices, this is also, audio is also a huge, huge part of our partnership, and our ability and the ways in which we use our voices is a huge, huge part of our project. But I think it's very important to highlight that Voicegems, for me, is fascinating, and for Trung as well, because it disaggregates it away from us. And we've built careers around how we use our voice. But this provides an opportunity for us to highlight other people. And yes, we are a huge, huge part of showing what we can do, and us as artists are a big part of this project. But to have individuals come and use the system to highlight theirs is what makes Voicegems very, very unique and specific for us.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about that. What we just said. You've been working and experimenting with your own voice for a long time, and with the Voicegems project, it's not only about your voice anymore. It's about many voices, a voice in general, and I find that notable. Actually, maybe you can talk about a bit more about this process of shifting your attention from your own voice to other voices.
Yeah, I think so. We're already discussing like specific curators to come in to select and curate sets of pieces between 3 to 5. We've been very lucky to already be connected with many of the world's leading digital curators, and some of the collectors as well. We've been astonished to have some leading voices, no pun intended, to be supporting the project. But the idea of creating this like disaggregated tree where even gifting has been fascinating. So we will produce a gem as a gift for one individual, and this ends up creating a partnership or collection. This is what happened with Alfred and Ai Weiwei. And we produced a gem from a conversation Ai Weiwei had with a dear friend of his. And there's something about that seems so much more profound and intimate than the ability to perform. And I think sometimes we can associate voice with performance and our ability. How do we say something? How well do we say it? How well do we sing? How well do we shout? But actually, many of our smaller moments in voice are very profound. And I had a project with UCL, the University College of London, with an amazing neurologist called Sophie Scott. And she talks about that for example, Marcus, the conversation we're having right now is actually one of the most complex acts in all of nature. So when you see this interaction and how we communicate, there's actually something deeply profound and fluid that we do not see because it's so ingrained in us. There are many of these expressions that we don't really stop or hold or acknowledge. And when we produce or freeze a vocal moment in the form of a gem, we're able to serve those moments. And actually, when we think of still image or the visual arts or digital, visual and portraiture, or we can have a photo of someone, but most precious vocal expressions are on a hard drive or they're on a phone. And this is to serve vocal expression and show these intimate, deeply intimate and amazing kind of acknowledgements, which is my life's work and Trung's day-to-day life and the fact that there's more happening. That's for me where this more spiritual digital element of the project starts to kind of take shape. Can you still hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, good.
Just listening, and yeah, I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much. Yeah.
No, it's perfect. That's why we are here, to listen to you, actually. So, in one of your TED Talks, you speak about how humans only use 20% of their vocal capacity. And I was wondering if you know any reason why we have so much extra capacity available, or maybe have your own theories about that.
Yeah, so when someone says a statistic like that, I think it's very important to show like the theory, so the reason why something's like that's been said. So on average, language has around 30 phonemes. So these are the individual pressures that make up a language. And this is just an average. Some languages have 200. When you look at that number 30, and then you look at, in terms of the articulatory phonetics, the sounds, the actual articulations that a human being makes in their language versus what is actually possible. And especially from my culture in terms of voice and voice experimentation, and you see what is possible. People have no idea the expressive range of their own voices. You start to see that there's actually 10x times possibilities than what people use every single day in their voice. And this is something that has come up in many academic collaborations with me as an artist in residence and working with academics, is that, hold on, there is more range. There's more range in our voices that we do not use and we do not push. And another thing that people don't often think about is that the voice is the body. Like our voices it's a physical thing. So when we're using a limited expressive range, there comes questions of, well, how does the way we move this part of our body affect how we think and affect how we approach things? So many of us know if we don't use our range with our body, if we do not stretch, if we do not move, what starts to happen? We start to ache, or we start to feel constricted, and there's a frustration that can build. And there are many interesting ideas that to actually push the voice is to push the mind, and that you can't separate voice with consciousness. And to shout and to scream and to experiment has a catharsis, it has a release. And this can sound like a kind of just a nice thing, a kind of holistic idea. But actually, the deeper you go and the more that you listen to these ideas, you can start making these small changes in voice. And it's very, very fascinating. If I was to talk like this all the time and use only one tone of speaking, what would life be like for all of us? You can start feeling that constriction. So a lot of my work comes at it from a lateral place outside of the realms of language, that actually, if we are to test our range, if we are to push ourselves, there's actually many gifts that are there, and it can affect how we think. And this statistic of we only use 20% of our vocal capacity is backed by that idea that actually looking at language and looking at range, there's a huge, huge gap between what people use and what they can use. So I'm really fascinated. All the work that I do and what Trung is capable of, we're moving towards these projects that help people increase that 20%. And when people see me perform, there tends to be this kind of period where they experiment or they play or they try things out. But if you continue with this, there are many, many benefits, and it's a point of fascination. And anyone listening now, like, you're more than welcome to message with like any more questions.
Yeah, let's look if there are some. I have been no questions. Just a comment by Mr. Weidinger inviting you to Linz again, as he did last time, which if you remember. Yeah, let's talk about the obvious fascination with voice. How did that fascination come about? What was the first time when you experienced your own voice as something you want to explore?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't always tell this story, but I feel like we're connected now. So yeah, so I grew up in quite a rough part of East London, and I grew up in what we call an underclass family. Both of my parents are neurodiverse. I'm neurodiverse. I'm diagnosed ADD dyslexic, which is something I'm absolutely proud of. And this environment meant that everything around me made me feel like I did not have a voice. It made me feel like I didn't actually have a unique place in the world. And it was just this ability where music and sort of London-based electronic music around me, which surrounded me, enveloped me where I was growing up, early dubstep, grime, and the much more experimental side of electronic music. And I realized that actually when I was experiencing this music, I started to speak it. And I started to remember ideas. And this, for me, for some reason, it clicked. The fact that I could clearly remember the sounds that I heard, and then remembering compositions through just speaking and remembering tunes. And for me, when I was traveling to school or to college, it became a way for me to listen to music, just this kind of remembering and speaking. And this opened up a door where I went from just speaking it to then actually thinking, well, why does this sound this way? And what is the actual sort of body of these noises? And for some reason, it clicked with me. I had this ability to recreate sounds, to start composing with voice. And that, I fell so deeply in love with that, the instancy of it, the fact that I didn't have to rely on anyone else. And I think that was the main thing as a dyslexic ADD young person who didn't have any opportunities. My voice was like it was mine, and no one could take it away. I could never forget it. And I could practice whenever I wanted. So this became my temple and my home and my religion all at the same time. And I did not know at the time that it was going to become a lifelong obsession. But till the day I die, this ability to explore, it stems from that feeling of like, what's my place and what's an innovation and what's something that may have not happened before. And I think voice is my place for that. And Trung Bao as well. He has many innovations that are so stunning when it comes to what he can do with his voice.
Yeah, maybe we can go back to one topic I left out earlier in this conversation, but you were talking about the blockchain and how it can preserve things and make them permanent. So the blockchain and NFTs, they have been like the huge topic in the last months in the art world and everywhere else, obviously. So, and as an artist in both visual arts and music, where do you see the possibilities of the NFTs? And yeah, I mean, are there any other projects you're working on in this context? I know you said you don't want to talk too much about other projects. Maybe leave this out, but yeah, just your opinion on the NFT craze.
Yeah, I think in terms of like Web3 and this idea of being able to create permanence and longevity, new ways for people to interact with art. This is what I'm mostly fascinated by. And I think that collectors and individuals interacting with art have new opportunities which are as interesting as the art itself. So we had something fascinating happen 2 weeks ago where we released certain pieces which have a utility, where when people collect, they can have a custom gem made from a voice of their selection, so from a data point of their selection. And one collector sent us his wedding vows, and he actually, which I mentioned earlier, but when he and his wife, they read, his native language is Spanish, her native language is English. They both read them out at the same time. And we then did a single reading of this one audio that they created. And then we produced a gem. So as I mentioned, them minting the piece when they were married as a new ceremony, like this is what I think is deeply fascinating, is that the blockchain offers a new way for individuals to create their own traditions. And it's a general comment. But I think that the blockchain, based on these artistic projects, has the opportunity to be spiritual or wholesome. And I think the aim for, I mean, everything is in question right now. I think every technological system is in question based on what's happened with the pandemic, our infrastructures and these things. We have to remember that it's very hard to know for sure. But what our bet is this offers a new ways for collectors to be creative and have permanence. And I'm really interested by this idea of future traditions. And I think the ability to actually replace diamond engagement rings with voice-generated gemstones, which is something that we've done a few times now, is replacing what are these kind of older traditions that came from marketing campaigns. And I think the blockchain allows us to do this. And I think it can be a deeply spiritual thing. So that's like an overview kind of viewpoint.
Mm. You were talking about the pandemic. So if there had not been any pandemic, would you have found the time to do the Voice Gems project?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think it was something that was coming regardless. But I think for many of us, this acceleration into the digital and the simulated is something that we've all experienced. And I think we all evolve as creative practitioners, and sometimes starting something new is actually not as important as ending something else and knowing when to kind of move forward and to evolve and to change. And I think the pandemic for myself and for Trung as well offered us a new opportunity to go even deeper into the experiential and experimental spaces. So I'm very grateful for that aspect of it. I mean, I found it deeply inspiring, but when I've said that in the past, I also have to stop and acknowledge how much difficulty it's caused many, many people and myself. It's on an emotional and, troubling and tragic level for many. So my personal response to that is to create, and I can't speak for other people, but this ability to think and find concepts and projects that have longevity. And I've said this before in this conversation, is I feel like there is no arguable, foreseeable reason that we will stop making gems for the next 50 years. There is no reason for that. I don't think I would have found the perfect sort of collection of ideas and themes if the pandemic did not happen. So for that, I am grateful.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for not being offended by that question, actually.
No, of course not. Yeah.
I just saw that Trung Bao is watching, so shout out.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will come to an end in just one more question by me, but maybe there are some more questions by the audience. So if you have some questions to Yeff, please now. And so I just wanted to ask you one more thing that is more about the Metaverse. So we were showing this exhibition in virtual world, and these virtual platforms have also recently become popular for musicians. So would you consider to play a concert in the Metaverse yourself?
Yes. So, I mean, my background is in like experiential performance design. And like, that's what I was doing mostly before, is using emerging technologies for performance and installation. So it goes without saying. And I think the main things that we're setting up now are the actual large scale exhibitions of gems that we've made. I mean, I think that's one beautiful thing about NFTs that people don't say enough is when you have a work, it can be on a screen in your house, but it could also be on the side of a building. Like the scale becomes something that is you can't have with physical works. So we have a physical exhibition planned with someone, which I can't announce yet, in January next year. But we also have this digital exhibition in your Cryptovoxels space. There are audio elements. So one aspect even in that exhibition is you can hear the sound design of some of the pieces. So when we actually have the voice data, we get a pure reading from the audio itself and the voice. But once that's happened, there is a lot of love put into the unique one-of-one audio of each gem. So we can also start to collect, when we have 1,000 voices, 100 voices, the 60 voices that we already have, we're already planning to be able to, myself and Trung, to be able to perform, but also to create audio, sound art, sound design pieces that can be exhibited alongside the physical pieces. And I think the combination of spatial audio and the sonic arts, like with NFTs and digital art, is a marriage made in heaven. So we're looking forward to exploring physical iterations of voice gems. I mean, that's really where things get exciting.
That's great to hear. Okay, so thank you, Harry. You really showed us you said some beautiful things, and you really showed us that you're not only good with shaping voice, but also shaping words.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted to draw the attention of our audience once more to your exhibition. It's Voicegems by Reeps100 and Trung Bauer. It can currently be viewed on Cryptovoxels at the DFC Francisco Carolinum, which is located on the island of San Francisco, 17 Clarion Alley. But you can find the link and all the information on our website, ooekultur.at. And so thank you, Harry. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a good evening.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm sure we'll speak soon, Markus.
We will. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.